My passage is from James Joyce's short story called The Sisters, and The Sisters is the very first story seen in his collection of short stories called The Dubliners. And The Dubliners gives readers kind of this view of Dublin that no one else really sees. Like, it's all stories of the lower middle class and the trials they go through and the things that they witness. And inside the entire work, there are some like book-wide themes that are like persistent throughout all the different stories, but all these different people and places. And these themes are death, paralyzation, and decay. And the theme of death is seen in almost all of them, and you kind of see how people deal with death and how death of certain people like impacts both the narrator, who is James Joyce, and other people around him. And then the theme of paralyzation is seen both figuratively and literally in the book. And literally, it is seen literally in the passage that I will talk to you about soon. And figuratively, it's seen as like people like paralyzed in their lives, and people who don't know what to do, or like paralyzed with fear, or paralyzed to make decisions, and like that. And then decay is seen, it kind of goes hand in hand with death, and it's symbolized by the colors yellow and brown. And then back to the sisters. My passage is the very first page of it, and the first sentence starts off in kind of a mysterious tone, and it is, "There was no hope for him this time, it was the third stroke." And you don't know who this him is they talk about, and you're not sure what his relationship is to the narrator, who is introduced in the second line. And you don't know why he had a stroke or what this is going to do to him, except for that it's a very negative thing, because the first part of the line is, "There was no hope for him this time." And then throughout this very first paragraph, Joyce introduces himself as a narrator, and he also repeats the words dead a lot, and talks about like deadly and death and corpse, and he repeats like morbid words like that. And so this like theme of death is really just like homed in, and you really know that it's something that's very important in this story. It's like a big theme. And also in the first paragraph, the theme of paralysis is mentioned, and the actual word is there, and that kind of just like proves to the reader that it's a really important thing to Joyce, and that it really impacted him. And you can see that in the line after that, line 9, where it says, "It had always sounded strangely in my ears, like the word gnomon in the Euclid, and the word simony in the Catechism. But it now sounded to me like the name of some maleficent and sinful being. It filled me with fear, and I longed to be nearer to it, and to look upon its deadly work." And so this shows how James Joyce's how this like paralyzation, this idea of being like completely stuck inside your body, kind of not interest him, and just kind of like capture his curiosity, because it filled him with fear, but this fear kind of wanted him to go look for more, to try and figure out what all this is, because it was his first like experience with someone dying up close to, who was really close to him. And the line, "It filled me with fear," really just shows what a huge impact it has on him. And in this passage, Father Flynn, who is the man who died, but I'll talk about that in a few minutes, he is literally paralyzed, like he cannot move. And so this is just like how it's like literal paralyzation seen rather than figurative paralyzation. And then the whole purpose of the sisters is to introduce these, first introduce these huge themes of death, paralyzation, and decay. Because death is seen in Father Flynn dying, paralyzation is seen in him, and decay, he's eventually going to decay. And this is, like, everything is just kind of relating back to this character of Father Flynn, who really isn't mentioned that much, and that kind of adds to the mysterious tone that this passage has. Because you don't really know much about him other than that he was a father, he was like an ex-reverend, and that he was close to the narrator in some way. But you don't know much about him. And then, in line 23, like after the first paragraph, you're introduced to the characters of Old Cotter and the narrator's uncle and aunt, who are kind of seen in, like, not like a negative kind of way, I guess you would say, because, or since you're seeing through the narrator's eyes, they seem negative, because all they're doing is complaining about who Father Flynn was, and they're not really saying anything nice about him, even though he passed away, and they just don't have anything nice to say. And I have just lost my train of thought. Where was I? Yeah. Oh, right, line 23. Okay. So this is where mystery is seen, because the first... Oh, wait. Okay, let's go to line 17. In line 17, Old Cotter says, "No, I wouldn't say he was exactly, but there was something queer. There was something uncanny about him. I'll tell you my opinion." And this is kind of just, he's not, even like, having read the story many times, I still don't know what he's talking about. It's really confusing, and he doesn't really, I don't know, it just adds to the mystery. It's very vague, and I think you're almost like paralyzed in confusion. That was a lame joke. Yeah. And then in line 23, more mystery is seen when Old Cotter, I think again, says, "I have my own theory about it," he said. "I think it was one of those peculiar cases, but it's hard to say. And you don't know what this peculiar, sorry, I can't say that word, what this peculiar case is, but they all kind of just like talk about Father Flynn in this bad kind of light, and in just like a negative kind of tone. And we don't really know who the real Father Flynn is, because the narrator doesn't give his opinion on anything, and all we really get are these opinions on adults, which is so different than what a child thinks and what a child views when someone dies too. It's all just it's a very vague beginning to a really important story in the collection, The Dubliners. And because we don't know anything about the narrator, we don't even know how old he is when this happens, and we only know that this is like his family members talking, and Father Flynn was close to him. We don't know anything specific about him. It's just very vague. Very vague. And Father Flynn is the focus of this entire story, but it is in this passage his name is only mentioned once. And James, the narrator, doesn't even know about his death up until this point at line 29. Like 29 lines through the passage, and the narrator doesn't know what's going on. Because his uncle says, "Well, so your old friend is gone, you'll be sorry to hear." And the narrator says, "Who?" And his uncle says, "Father Flynn." And the narrator doesn't give his opinion really on anything about his friend being dead. He kind of just like goes along with what his family's saying about him. And he's almost like paralyzed in this feeling he has to pay attention to them. Like, because there's this line 31, "I knew that I was under observation, so I continued eating as if the news had not interested me." So he didn't really want his family to know that he was upset about it, because I don't think that he wanted... wait, let's erase that line. And then paralyzation is also seen in this like last chunk, as his family is kind of paralyzed in the way that they don't see that the narrator is grieving. They're kind of like paralyzed in their own ways, and they don't really see that the narrator is not happy. And these three characters act as parent figures almost to the narrator, and they give opinions, but the narrator never really agrees or disagrees, which adds to the whole like vagueness and mystery of the passage. And because this passage is seen through the narrator's eyes, it gives you a very limited view. on it, because it's only his view of this scene, and we don't even get his opinions. We only get kind of what he sees and how this like paralysis impacted him. The end. Yay.